Hello, everyone. This is Rancy here, and today we're going to be taking a look at RB, specifically in the second wave. Now, I do want to mention a couple of things regarding the RB deck, because I've played it a decent amount casually at locals, and I have fun with the deck. I actually really like its unique game plan. It reminds me of the armor cards from Yu-Gi-Oh! Original series, where Vala was using the armor cards, and then he gained bonus effects if they were equipped. So RB, I feel like, is a prototype towards that gameplay style, but unfortunately, RB is sadly not really a good strategy. And the reason was simply because even though the first wave of cards had really good cards, it was nowhere near as powerful as Mitsurugi or even Mimighoul. Simply just because the deck just wasn't functional as its own deck. So the reason was it just didn't have enough names and good enough interaction. So as a result of it, the deck was mainly still experimentation in other machine decks like Machina or Cyber Dragon, but due to the downsides of some of these cards, it is actually really hard for the deck to contest with it. So as a result, its power ceiling is significantly lower than any other relevant deck in the format, or even back then. To give an example, Mitsurugi's power level is almost that of a Josh deck, but the power level of this deck is prior to Crossover Breakers, or even Phantom Iron. It's really that low. Now, to give you more into context a bit, I'll go over the first wave of cards quickly for you. First one up. So in the first wave there was Vulcan Rocket, G10 Driller, G10 Cutter, RB Brute Blues, Funk Dock, and Stage Landing, and Vulcan Booster. So for the RBs, these three have the same first effect, or not really effect, more like inherent special summon, that if you control no face-up monsters, or the only face-up monsters you control are RBs, you special them from the hand, but they can only be done once per turn this way. So these are effectively machine extenders as long as you have no monsters. Or you only have RBs, so you can extend with these guys. Which is not too bad actually, because some of them actually have pretty good levels. Like you have Rocket Rocket for cannon versions, you have Driller Cutter for rank 4 plays, you have Driller for rank 3 access if you want to, or length actually necessary. And on top of that, all the Vulcans, or sorry, all the RBs, all share a second effect where they get a bonus effect if they are pointing or if they are getting pointed by an RB Link monster. Yeah, or say link to it. Rocket allows you to pay 1,000 to target up to two cards your opponent controls to destroy them. And you destroy this card, then you get 500. Then you inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each card that was destroyed. Drill Cutter, at the cost of 700 life points in destroying this, you can negate any spell card effect and negates that effect and destroy that card. Then you have Jet, where at the cost of 500, you destroy this and target one monster your opponent controls and destroy both of them. So what you have is going second removal, you have a Spawn Trap Negate, and you have monster removal. Quick effect monster removal. Not too bad actually, you have decent form of interaction. Yes, then you have Funk Dock, which on activation, you add an RB card from your deck to hand except itself, and each time a monster your opponent controls destroyed by a battle card effect, you gain 500 life points. That does happen a lot because you are going to attack over monsters or you're going to remove them off the board. But the main effect about this card is important is if a face of RP monsters you control leaves the field by a card effect, except during the damage step, this is a very important but that effect is going to be very important by the way later in the video when we go over the context of it. If that happens, you get special an RP monster from your deck. But this effect can only be done once per turn, but you can only activate one Funk Dog per turn. Now, the reason that's important is because these guys will float. This effectively means every RB effectively gains a bonus effect in the sense that when they get destroyed themselves, they float into an RB with a different name. They float into an RB monster. That's effectively what Funk Dog is giving every RB monster effectively. Which is why that Funk Dog, in my opinion, is a mandatory 3 of in all RB decks. Because not only does it search these guys from the deck, it also allows them to float. Now, what's cool about it is that you don't have to destroy the RBs to do it. If you can consistently set this up, you can consistently send them to the graveyard by an effect, and then this will trigger. And one of the ways you did this was with Clockwork Knight, because Clockwork Knight can tribute any. You just target any machine that has 1,000 less protection in grave, Then you tribute a machine monster, or except this guy, and you special on the monster in defense position. So, if you have, say, Driller or Cutter in the graveyard, you contribute one spare machine, one spare RB, and bring it back. Then Fungduck summons the other one you need from the deck. The unfortunate downside here is, other than Cutter for going first at times in Clockwork Knight, pre-second wave, we didn't really have a way to set up Fungduck's second effect consistently, but now we do in the second wave. Now, Stage Landing. This card is actually insane. This special summons any RP from your deck or extra deck with a different name than the cards you control. I want to point out about this card, that effect specifically, it is not once per turn. So you could do all three of them in the same turn, and you can summon any of your big RBs legitimately without going too much resources. That's pretty crazy. And if an RB wants to control will be destroyed by a card effect, you can manage this card in your set. This doesn't start a chain, and it's not much per turn either. However, as powerful as this card is, it does come with a pretty big significant drawback, where you cannot special summon from the extra deck the turn you activate this card, except Machine Monster with 15 or less original attack. This is a pretty big drawback, because it unfortunately limits its utility in hybrid versions, or in other hybrid builds that's not pure or the Mako version you see here. What this means, people, is, if you do other hybrid builds, you cannot use this card. However, this was a pretty big problem in the first wave. However, in the second wave, we actually have more ways to bypass this drawback by just saving it as follow-up or just pitching it to the graveyard. But rest assured, this card's insane. You do not want to play less than 2 of this card. It's such a good card. And we have Vulcan Booster, which if it's linked summon, it adds an RB spell from deck to hand. And if this card is in the extra monster zone, you special an RB from your hand or graveyard. Then you give it this to another one of your main monster zones. But to be fair, we never do that anyway. We rarely ever do. Also, you cannot special from the extra deck for the rest of this turn except Machine Monster with 15 or less attack. This card is great. This is a mandatory part of every combo, and in my opinion, this is probably the main choke. This is one of the biggest choke points in RB. You want to hit this guy on the field. If you hit this card on the field, like say you Imperm or Veiler it, they have to commit to a second one in order to use the second effect, because the first effect already went off, so therefore you lose access to an RB search. Now, in terms of the drawback, it has the same Xenolog as this, but unlike Stage Landing, you actually can use this effect, second effect, anytime later, anytime in your combo. You could do this at the end of it, so that way you can set up the RB part of the end board. So this is good in the hybrid versions as a result, because then you can just set this up and just get some stuff in that position. Now, so that's effectively was the first wave. All-7 cards are actually pretty good. They provide decent solid interactions. They have a lot of consistency, and all the RBs can sell themselves for free. So you can splash in any other machine engine to turbo out the archetype's end board. However, there's a reason why this deck was nicknamed really bad, right? The reason was because there was a few big, huge weaknesses of this deck. The main one being, one of the big ones, is it lacks a Link 1. Which is really weird, because all the RB main deck guys, Rocket, Driller, and G10, they don't do anything when they're summoned. They literally only do anything on the board. Other than being extenders, they only do anything on the board if they're pointing to an RB Link. And why is that a problem? Well, here's the problem with it. If they had a Link 1 that had a simple effect that stated like, maybe if it's Link summoned, take an RB monster from your deck and either add a hand or special it, but while you control the summoned monster, you cannot summon from the extra deck except machines with 15 or less attack. Now, why I say this is because, the reason why I say this is because, if that were the case actually, every RB main deck monster that could summon themselves for free would become a starter, because then you get access to the same endboard setup, but you can do it without using your normal. And that would be great, because that means you could free up the space to play more impactful normal summons if that were the case, but they don't have one. Which is very unfortunate. They still have that weakness even with the second wave. However, I could see them probably getting a monster like that in the OCG when they come out next year. I could definitely 100% see that. Who knows, maybe Konami could make a random TCG exclusive Link 1 machine that works with only machine decks only. It would probably maybe count for that. We'll see, however. We will see, however, how that goes out. But for now, yeah. So let's. So that's the first big weakness. The second big weakness of the deck is its ceiling. The ceiling of this deck, unfortunately, is pretty low. Actually, it's not even that high of a ceiling. If you open, for example, and let me go, and this goes back to their one card combo being really weak, is their only one card combo is Stage Lane Duck. But the problem, because Duck can go into Stage Lane, and Stage Lane can technically go into Duck. But here's unfortunately the downside. If you open Funk Dog and you have Stage Lane, you summon out Brew Blues, and Brew Blues, you either add Stage Lane or you summon RB, like Driller, and all you really get for just that is just monster removal into Spell and Trap Negate or vice versa. That's all you freaking get. That's literally all you have. The ceiling is so freaking low, and that's from that. Now, if you add in, say, something like, say, for example, Micro Gear Frame, you could get out a Citadel and a potentially a King Regulus as a part of the setup. But the main one being mainly Citadel. So the result of it is, from all the one-card combos, depending on your build, you only get a maximum, literally only up to 4 interactions at best. Now, it's not bad interaction. Raigeki effect is proven to be a very powerful in today's format because of Mitsurugi, and an army gate that's easily accessible is nothing to scoff at. But if that's all you really have, though, the deck's board ceiling is not only weak in comparison to every other deck right now, it's also easy to break. Because this leads to another problem, is that the RBs are so weak in stats, your opponent could just swing over these and just out the threat right out the gate if you don't have a stage line that protects them. And this leads to, and that leads to a third big huge problem about this deck is its recursion. And when I mean recursion, I don't mean just monster or board like effects. I also mean in terms of follow-up. Because let's think about the follow-up you get. Tongdo does nothing else. Funk does technically follow-up, but you would have to have another copy in your hand. Stage Line's follow-up, but it's vulnerable to nearly every single type of negate in the game, even though it's not once per turn. Arby's Brutalist is follow-up, but here's the problem. Again, even though this can stick around because it has bonus effects, if your opponent outs the low guys first, they just out this card, there goes your main form of follow-up. So the result of it is, you have a deck that is very, very consistent, but its ceiling is on the lower side, it's easy to break, and your follow-up is relatively weak. So as a result of it, you're kind of relatively hard carried by a lot of the non-engine in the game in order to make your board harder to break, which really sucks because if it had better follow-up, it would actually not, the 4 interactions wouldn't be such a big problem. But sadly, that was not the case. So as a result of it, this deck really just never took off like Mitsurugi did in the first wave, at least in terms of like its impact on the Raizo version. However, I will say that this version of RB here, RB did see some experimentation in the first wave. There was the Cyber Dragon version that saw a bit of experimentation at YCS events on stream. But also, I recently learned this until early today, about 4 weeks ago, there was a Machina Earth Machine RB type deck that actually got top 4 at a regional. Which is pretty surprising because I was actually not expecting that, considering this deck's not really that strong to begin with. But, in terms of first wave, even though its power level in comparison to Mitsurugi and even Mimighoul is nowhere near as good as them, all 7 RB cards are actually still pretty good. But they needed more names, and they needed better endboard pieces in ceiling and recursion in order to compensate it for their big weaknesses. Did the second wave deliver that? I would say, relatively for the most part, yes. Now, admittedly, when I read the second wave of cards, I thought, okay, these are actually pretty decent cards, but they're nothing that great. Nothing super good, but they're pretty decent. Now, is it as good as Mimighoul's second wave? Hell no. It's definitely not as good as that. What I will say is that a lot of people think the second wave is terrible, and which was the main reception. But after I tested this second wave out on Dueling Bug and then eventually on Needle Pro, my conclusion is this second wave is way better than I originally thought it was, and I think it's way better than people think. Because I think a lot of people don't really seem to have never played against the deck or even played it themselves to understand how the deck even works. So let's go into detail, right? So what I was hoping the second wave was the following. They would give them a good continuous spell, that would that would be good fodder for Clockwork Knight. A Link one that would turn every main deck RB into a starter, and the other one was better recursion slash better endboard pieces. And so far, I actually got 3 or 4 of those actually correct. And actually, they don't have a Link one, unfortunately, still, but their endboard pieces and recursion follow up is and their ceiling is a lot better now. And I'll go over them. So let's begin with the new cards here. Start with the main decks. We have Pile Bunker. Same summoning condition as the other RBs. But he has one effect that's interesting, is if an attack is declared involved with opponent's monster and a brute boost that points to this guy, you pay 1,500 to destroy every card your opponent controls in this card. Now, one thing that will happen here is, if you attack with brute boost, you have Fung Duck in this guy on the field. You attack with brute boost, Pile Bunker then triggers, destroys every card in the field. Fung Duck then triggers, which then summons a new RB straight out of your deck. Now, let me explain one important thing why this is strong. Because your attack turn is now gone because of Pile Bunker, Brute Boost gets an attack redirect, or it gets a replay that occurs, and you get to attack, and you can redo your first attack. So what this means is, because of these new cards actually here, in this context, Brute Blues is actually no longer a part of your main endboard. You're actually using Brute Blues to kill on the crackback now instead. That's what Konami wants you to do in the second wave. They want you to use Brute Blues for the follow-up and kill them on the crackback. Now, even though this card realistically is the worst card in the second wave, well, or maybe second worst card once we get to another one of the traps down below. This card I think should be worth considering playing, because even if you never use the second effect, it still summons itself in the hand for free though, like the other RBs, so it's at least still another machine name that could special summon itself. So it's not the end of the world. Now the other two is a brand new wave of RB type monsters known as the Lambdas, which is essentially, I think based on the stream, they were the competitors of the Vulcan and the G10s. They're like the competitors. Now, there is one big thing I want to mention about these two in particular that makes the Lambda series unique. Unlike Vulcan and G10, at the cost of the fact that these guys don't do anything when they're summoned, and the only way to get their second effect is they're pointing to an RB monster. The Lambda cards actually have effects when they're summoned, normal special. But the cost of it is they cannot special summon themselves from the hand. So, unlike for example these, that are essentially just free bodies, these two are unfortunately not. Other than a couple of card effects you have that can summon these from the hand, you don't have any way. If you have no other way to get these out of your hand or summon them, they're just dead bricks. But the thing is, these are actually worth running at the cost of being bricks, because they actually have good effects that are relevant. So, for Lambda Blade, if he's not special, he foolish barrels an RB card from the deck, except himself. That may not sound very good at first glance, because why would you do that when none of the RBs have graveyard effects? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Well, this is important for a couple of factors. Mainly, one of them is you could dump Stage Landing, so you get the destruction protection. But the main one is it gets the other names into rotation, and every combo out the showcase always uses that effect, because you need 3 different names in rotation. And also, during your opponent's main phase, if he's linked to an RB, you pay 1,400 to target monster your opponent controls. You destroy this card, change a heart that monster, take control of it, then destroy it during the end phase. So this being said, it does not matter. That monster's gone no matter what. It's just going to go right back into the grave. So that's decent. It's enough for monster removal, but it's also good because this means there are some matchups where Drill's power removal actually can help the opponent, but this is good into those types of matchups, so that's actually pretty good. And finally, we have Lambda Cannon. This card I want to mention is really important. This is probably, in my honest opinion, one of the best main deck RBs in this whole deck. In my opinion, I think it's actually the best one. And the reason for this is 2 factors. Number 1, if it's this card's normal special, you target any RB in your graveyard except itself, add to your hand. This is much needed recursion. That is much fucking needed. This deck needed really good recursion. This is a good one. But the real main reason this is the best RB main deck monster is because of its actual main effect. If it's linked to an RB link, you pay 1,200. Destroy this card. If you do, look at your opponent's hand and then special one of them to their field but negate its effects. Now you might be wondering, now, I know that sounds bad at first. Why would you make them summon the monster to their field with the effect negated? What people don't seem to realize about this effect, why it's so strong. You instantly look at their hand first by destroying itself. If there's a big threat that they have in an opening hand, prime example being the Bureau of the Primal Being. Well, guess what? If they have the Bureau that can stop the rest of your combo, you just force them to summon it to their field. And keep in mind, this deck has removal. You can just get rid of the body off the field. You can just get rid of it off the field with Vulcan Rocket if necessary. But the other one too, and the thing is about that effect too, you can choose not to special on the monster. So if you look at the hand, they have no hand trap, but they have no big threat to you. You can just not even summon anything to their field. You literally now gain hand knowledge, and you get full combo. Now you can go full combo, and because you gain hand knowledge, you can now adjust your interaction to beat what's in their hand. And not only does that effect is insane. That is insane in this deck. It's full hand knowledge, rip a card out of the hand potentially. Your combos now become safe for the interaction, and you can adjust your end board accordingly. That is insane, man. That's like so crazy strong. Unfortunately, I wish this could special itself in the hand like the other Arby's did, because if it did, I would 100% play this as a 2 or 3 of, because it's that strong of a card. But sadly, because it can be a brick, it's only a 1 of card, but you can easily access it in almost any combo in your deck. So that's the main deck. Now here's the card that I really want to talk about that I think is a big, huge game changer. Well, other than Canada being a game changer, I would say the Composition Test is also one of the best cards in the deck. This is, when activated, you can target a level 3 or higher RB monster in your graveyard, special summon it. Okay, simple fact. It's a monster reborn. Second effect, you can target any number of RBs you control. You gain life points equal to the combined original attack, and if you do return to hand or extra deck, then you can special one RB monster from your hand. This effect can only be done once per turn, and you can only activate one Operation Test per turn. Now, why is this a game changer? 3 big factors. Number 1, easily accessible continuous spell. The deck now has an easily accessible continuous spell that works with Clockwork Knight. After you use its done its main purpose, you do Clockwork Knight, dump it, add Clockwork Knight. Then make Barricade, dump Clockwork Knight, add Regulus, and summon Regulus as Omnigate. Now end phase, add back Operation Test as follow-up. That's insane. On top of that, it's a monster freaking reborn for the deck, which is very good because this deck needs better recursion and better follow-up, and this card fits both categories perfectly. And I want to also mention about that second effect. That second effect sounds like it's not that very good, because why would you put an RB back only to summon a new one? And the life point gain doesn't matter because the new time rules doesn't promote winning in time anymore. And that technical argument I can understand. However, here is where the deck really starts to change. Because if you remember Funk Dog, I mentioned before that if an face-up RB monster you control left the field by an effect, and it doesn't have to be destroyed, which is why it works with Clockwork Knight, well, guess what? Operation Test can trigger that effect. So by putting one of your RBs back in and resummon the same one, you instantly get a new body without sacrificing a body. So you get effectively 2 bodies off of 1 effect. Which, in this context, that's great for the deck's end board and allows the deck to set up interaction a lot more efficiently than before. Yes, this card is a huge game changer for this deck alongside Lambda Cannon. It's Clockwork Knight Father, it's recursion, it's follow-up, and it's life point gain so you can stay healthy, and it triggers Funk Dog. This is a very good card. Like, to me, this is like, usually I think, in my opinion, probably in the top 5 best cards in the archetype. It's like such a good effect. And now, let's talk about the trap cards. RB Last Stand. RB Last Stand's effect is essentially stage landing, but you can summon from the graveyard. But unfortunately, and if it's in the graveyard, and if your RB's monsters get targeted for an effect, card or effect, you can bash this card to negate that effect. However, unlike Stage Landing, none of these effects are solved once per turns. You can only choose one effect and only once per turn. This is not a bad effect. It does give you the option to summon from the graveyard, which actually does matter at times, because being able to get back your recursion that got outed would actually be pretty good. Unfortunately, however, this card has one big significant weakness though in comparison to, other than it's the fact you can only pick one effect per turn once that turn, the biggest weakness of this card is that it loses to both Ash Blossom and it loses to Ghost Bell. And unfortunately, Ash Blossom is everywhere. And everyone's playing it because of an answer to Moltres. And freaking Ash will always be super good no matter what. And the other one, Ghost Bell is also very good right now, either as a main or side deck option, because Ghost Bell contests a lot of the best cards in the game right now. It contests Mitsurugi's Graveyard Recursion. It can contest some of the turn 0 plays like Melee from Azuna to stop Lupus. And on top of that, she's also good into all the rogue decks that require the graveyard. So unfortunately, Last Stand gets outed easily by those two cards. Which is why this is probably the worst card, which is why I'm debating that this is likely the worst card in the second wave of support. However, that's not the case with Next Phase though. Next Phase is a count trap that, when your opponent activates a monster effect while you control an RB monster, not too difficult, you destroy one monster you control, and keep in mind about that part, you can destroy any monster. This can include the one you stole from Blade, or a spare monster on your field. You negate activation, destroy it, then you destroy that card, then you gain 2,000 life points. Again, the 2k life point does make a difference because you're going to pay life points a lot in the deck, and if you go into a simple game state, having a repeatable counter that refills your life points is very good in the context of RB. Now these are pretty solid traps. Well, Last Stand could be mixed bag depending on the opponent, but Next Phase is a pretty decent trap. But other than Brew Blues, how do we search these cards? If we already used the Brew Blues, how do we search them? Well, this is where the new Link 3 comes in. RB Shepherd's Crook. Now, unlike Vulcan Booster and Brew Blues that just need only machine monsters, what makes Shepherd's Crook kind of good, one of the reasons Shepherd's Crook is actually a good card, is actually that his link material is any 2+ monsters as long as one of them is an RB. Which is not that hard, because mostly combos you always have an RB to link it to climb into this. So what does he do? He gets fire attack for each monster you control except the sky. So he gets big relatively quickly. He has no protection unlike Brew Blues, but he gets bigger for every monster you have. During your main phase, you can set an RB trap from your deck or graveyard. Now that is very strong, because it means if you use the next phase, last turn, Shepherd's Crook will just reset this from the graveyard, so that's at least good. But the second phase is also where it gets strong. During your opponent's main phase, quick effect, you target 3 level 3 or higher RB monsters in your graveyard. You place 2 of them on the bottom of your deck, and if you do, get special the other in defense position. That effect is insanely strong for the deck's end board. Not only does this plus the trap heavily improve the ceiling of the deck significantly, it also improves the deck's recursion, because for one, you put names back into your deck, so Funk Dock back into your deck in rotation for Funk Dock, and secondly, you get back another piece of interaction from your graveyard. And that's a big problem that I have always said that the first wave had, was you had no way to get them back out of your graveyard. This plus Operation Test gives you much needed recursion in a deck that really lacked it, and it also improves your follow-up, because if this stays alive, well, guess what? You just recycle back next phase, get the names back in the rotation, so now you can just repeat the effect again. In a simple game state, this plus Brew Blues is so powerful, it's just instant constant recursion every turn, which is very good. And that's why, and yeah, that's the second wave support. It is insanely powerful second wave. Now, is it as good as Mimighoul, Mitsurugi, or hell, even as good as Mimighoul? I'll say not exactly. I would say it's somewhere in between. On one hand, the second wave is nowhere near as bad as Ashened or Tistina. Like, I think it's nowhere near as bad as people think. It's way better than people think if they actually played the deck or knew how the deck worked. However, it's not really as good as Mimighoul, however, because Mimighoul's second wave at least had a few really good cards that actually significantly changed the deck, improved their main game plan, and actually made them way more consistent. And the crazy part is, everyone said that Mimighoul was going to be unplayable because Impulse was released at the same time as the second wave. But time and time again, Mimighoul has constantly been proven in regional events, and even some YCS fence, then it's still able to compete and do really good, even when impulse was everywhere. And that's crazy to think about, right? So as a result of it, I would say my rating for the Shepherd's Crook second wave support is somewhere around, I think, a 7 to 7.5. I think it's a very good second wave for them, and it really improves their deck quite significantly. Now, I will say off the gate, this deck is not top tier. I do not think this deck's top tier or tier 1. But I think it's now a very solid rogue contender. It may be tier 2 if you're playing the K9 version of RB. Okay. So let me show you some combos. Okay, so we'll start off with essentially the Machina version, which is the closest to pure RB. Now in this scenario here, pretend this gear frame is any discard for Clockwork Knight, because 90% of the time in our combos, we always discard cards in our hand to activate the greater effect of Clockwork Knight. Very important because now we have easy access to that card now. Now, in this scenario, say your only starter is just Funk Dog / stage lining. Everything else in your hand is not even a starter or extender. Let's say the rest is non-engine. What can you do? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so let's look at this endboard piece. I made a slight mistake in this, but this will be correct in the second combo I'll show you. This endboard may not seem like a whole lot, but here's what this is, right? So in your graveyard, you have cannon, cutter, and blade in rotation. Those are your main targets for Shepherd's Crook. Now do keep in mind, about this combo, cannon was summoned on summon number 2 because of stage line. Because we did the first stage line summon Blue Blues had a second one, and that stage line summoned this. Now, because of Cannon's effect, we not only saw what was in the opponent's hand. If this freaking gear frame was a Nibiru, we made them summon it, so now the whole rest of the combo is Nibiru proof. And the result of it is, because that we now know what's in their hand, depending on what card they have, this cutter can instead be Driller. But I usually prefer Cutter in case they do at least have one spell that's good, because then this can contest it. So now let's see how many interactions is from a single stage like Funk Dog. Well, if you were able to keep Cutter on the field, that would be your Spell Trap Negator, Props itself, and then Funk Dog would then summon out from the deck your Driller, which would be monster removal, that's 2. Then use this effect to put your guys back into the deck for rotation. You summon Blade, which would be your third interaction, that's 3. Then you have next phase, which is interaction number 4, and you have Regulus, which is a Navigate, so that's interaction number 5. And on top of that, your Barricade added back Operation Test is follow-up. And you still have 3 more cards in your hand, which could realistically be non-engine, maybe more follow-up if necessary. Now, why is this very strong? Well, here's the one problem about Stage Line Funk Dog. Originally, in the first wave, if you did open Funk Dog or Stage Line, that was all you had, you only got a maximum 2 interactions. That was all you got. Every other piece of interaction you ever freaking had was like, it was just Drill and Cutter. But those were so easy to play around in the deck. That was so easy to play around. And as a result of it, if your opponent just M-perms or just hits freaking Cutter without triggering that effect, you had no other play. Like, there was literally no other way to keep playing the game. Or even set up a decent endboard. This board, however, is way freaking better for so many factors. One, you have way more consistent follow-up than you ever did previously, which is very good. And on top of that, this board plays around certain cards like way better than that thing. So like you can play around board breakers better, You have Tess's follow-up, which is pretty big. Overall, off of a single stage landing or funk dock, this is a great ass end board. This is like a really good end board. Okay, now here's the second one card slash 1.5 card combo. This is from a single gear frame. Wow, let's count how many summons this was. Gearframe was summon number 1, Uncles was summon number 2, this was summon number 3, Cat was summon number 4. And again, we've initiated the Biru, so now the whole combo is the Biru proof now, and we've done hand knowledge. Now again, this is the same endboard that I showed off. This is the same endboard from a single freaking Machina gear frame. It's the same endboard. It's the same piece of interaction, except the difference is, if you open gear frame as your starter, well, you now have Citadel to rotation, and now he's a Raigeki. So this is 6 interactions from a single gear frame. That's really freaking good, people. Like, that's very good. Really good freaking endboard. You have Monster Negate, Mind Control, Sponsor Negate, Monster Removal, Raigeki Effect, Omni Gate. Operation this follow-up, 3 more cards in hand. Crazy fucking endboard piece. Alright, this one's from Machina Redeployment. It's effectively the same combo as the previous one. Now, the one difference here is, it's effectively the same endboard piece I'll show. The difference here is if you have redeployment, you can just add Fortress, and then just use that as the Clockwork Knight discard fodder. Everything else in your hand can be left alone. Again, summon number 4, and again, summon number 4. We pretty much got hand knowledge. If they had a brew, we just deny it. Alright. Oh, let me do this. Now, let me showcase one other thing about this cool. I should have showcased this before in the last combo, but I'll showcase this here. So there's one really cool thing about Gear Frame, synergy with Regulus. So since Regulus equips the card that he targets, because the Gear Frame is a Union monster and he is an equip card, Gear Frame can special himself from the spell and trap zone onto your field. So what this means is, you can use him as an extender and just summon him for free. But the cool part is, if you decide to keep him equipped to Regulus, Gear Frame will make it so if Regulus will get destroyed, he can by battle card effect, you just destroy Gear Frame. So worst case scenario is, if you already got your endboard, you could just keep Gear Frame equipped to Regulus. Or if you want to, you could summon out Gear Frame and use him as fodder for next phase to destroy. But it's not too bad actually, all things considered. Yeah, this is a pretty good endboard for a single redeployment, huh? This is effectively like 6 interactions That's like crazy good. That's like 6 interactions. And again, this goes back to my point. The problem with this endboard was it only got max like around 3, maybe 4 if you got lucky. Here, you can set up 5 to 6 relatively consistently now. And it's harder to interact with because you have recursion that can easily summon them, and you have a counter trap. Like, that's really good. This is a very good endboard compared to previously. Alright, now for this combo, this deck has multiple 2-card combos, but I'm going to focus on the best one here for now. So for this combo Pacific Much, we're going to be utilizing River Stormer. Now, the one drawback of this combo here, admittedly, is it is admittedly pretty vulnerable to a few cards. For example, it's very vulnerable to Nibiru, because you don't have a way to stop Nibiru in 4 summons, like you did in the other combos. But this gives us the best ceiling from a 2-card combo at the cost of that. So what is it? Well, in River Stormer, you need 2 level 5s. If you've seen the deck list earlier, you'll notice that we play 2 Vulcan Rocket, at least in this version. That's because, in order to access River Stormer, if you open Giftring plus Vulcan Rocket, you need to play 2 Vulcan Rocket, at very minimum. You can play 3 of it if you want to increase the consistency of game to the setup. However, I've been doing it just fine with only 2 copies, so realistically only 2 is needed. But, here's what this combo can do. Oh, at the cost of losing to Nibiru. Now, unfortunately, this is another drawback of the combo. You have to use your first Clock Organite this early. But to keep in mind, this is the reason we play 2 of them, because we use the second one to get access to Night if necessary. And because we use his effect and he sent it G-Card as an effect, this allows us to get access to the second Vulcan Rocket, which means we now get access to River Stormer. Now, in this combo with Silverrunch here, since River Stormer gave us an alternate way to get the Regulus, now, we have the Clockwork Knight in the graveyard, and if you had a discard file that you want to do, you could use Clockwork Knight and then bash it, and then add another copy of Gear Frame as follow-up. So this would give you effectively 2 forms of follow-up, and 3 if Crook sticks around for a bit of time. Well, now since we have this and that, if they imprint this card, this is fine, because we could just pop it with next phase, and then just get this back in rotation, and still save the spell and trap to get for later. So yes, I don't need to let the combo go through, because it's pretty much the same interaction. The only main difference is, you would instead save Clockwork Knight and just add Gear Frame as follow-up to go with Operation Test. That's like the main big one. Alright, people. Here is the real meat and juice. This is the real 1-card. This is the build that I'm going to probably be playing with RB in the next set. This is, hands down in my personal opinion, the best version of RB post Doom Dimensions. The reason is because now that I have experimented the second wave and tested this build out a few days, this deck has effectively, and I'm going to say this straight off the gate, similar to the Machina version, this deck has 11 to 12 1-card / 1.5 card combos, and every single one of them leads into hand knowledge and potential hand trap rip. And for this one in context, Funk Dog is going to be the discard father for Clockwork Knight, because it can realistically be anything. This combo is the best 1-card combo in the whole deck, because it's hand trap knowledge, it's hand trap immunity, hand knowledge, it's full combo. It's so much interaction. And this is from a single copy of Noir. Here's what Noir can do. there you go. There's your first hand knowledge to see what's in their hand. Okay, I know people are gonna laugh and think about this card. Why is Turbo Booster in this deck? In the original first wave support, when I was trying out RB K9 with no warning deck, I was looking through the list of machine extenders that could probably be good to search on Stormer if, say, for example, you go to Ripper early. The only targets I found originally at the time was, I don't remember the name of the monster, but it's the level 5 infant track that if it summons itself, if it's summoned, it summons an infant, I think a monster from the deck, but it locks you to Earth Machines, which really sucks, which is bad because none of the RB links are Earth Machine, which is really terrible. The other one was Express Bullet Train, I believe it's called, where if all you control is Earth Machines, you can special from hand, and if it's in the graveyard during the end phase, you can add a machine monster from your graveyard to your hand. Now that's pretty good, but unfortunately there's one problem. Two problems. One, all the RB links, none of them are Earth Machine, so it's very hard to fulfill its condition. Secondly, Ripper is a Wind Warrior monster, so unfortunately, you have no way to consistently set up that card. So, for now, I decided to give up on the idea and just wait for the second wave to get revealed. Well, now that the second wave is revealed, and I noticed that it actually improves a lot of things about the deck, I went back into the list and I found Turbo Booster, and I read the effect that it could special summon itself for free, inherent special summon, as long as you have normal summon the monster this turn. Now, here's something about this card that's crazy. This is not even a very good card, but in the context of K9 build specifically, this is actually a good extender for the deck. And I want to point out, this is not a hard brick. You have a lot of good normal summons in the deck. Like, you have Scrapple Cycler, you have the K-Net engine in, and if you want to make it a pile deck, you could fit in a Machina engine to fulfill the condition. So it's not that hard, and as long as you conduct a normal summon, you got another machine body, you can just special Turbo Booster for free and just instantly go into RB Link combos. Now, is it necessary? I don't. Maybe as we optimize the deck a bit more, maybe it won't be as necessary. But for now, I think if my goal was to try to set up the RB endboard consistently with a K9 setup, I think Turbo Booster is going to be a needed card for the deck until we find a better option. Or if Konami gives us a better alternative over Booster. But for now, let's continue the combo. Now, this was another problem that the K9 build originally had. Because we didn't have the traps in that originally at the time during the first wave, all you could realistically do was get RBG, take counter a driller, summon to your field with Booster. Now, true, you get effectively 2 interactions if one died. And you got Ripper, her, and if you were playing the other quick spell instead of this card, you could get effectively like 3, 4 pops. You would get like 4 negates plus 5, so 5 interactions. That's still good, and you have this and that, so that's 6. That's still good. But the problem was, once again, this board had a lot of weaknesses. One, you don't have stage landing rotation, so as a result, your little guys get outed way too freaking easily. Your opponent can just no summon anything bigger than your RB main deck line and just attack over it. Now you lost 2 pieces of interaction from a single attack. Now all they then have to do is just deal with Ripper. Or if not, you force out Extreme. Now that may sound bad, now it may sound like a good thing, and it does keep your thing alive, but guess what? But guess what? Even though you traded 1 for 1, your opponent still has 5 cards in hand. That also likely could have been done as a bait. So what we want to do in the end board is not only improve the ceiling of the deck a bit more by adding a couple more layered interactions. Our goal is to try to set up follow-up in the context if that ever comes up again. Now I know you might be thinking, you didn't need to do that when you already had hand knowledge because of Noir. Yes, but I wanted to do this just so I could get the names in rotation. That's the main thing. Okay, now, here goes the other question I know I'll get people. Why did we sacrifice Ripper? In the Canine version of RB that we're running, we run 2 Ripper. Ripper, the first Ripper's main purpose is it has 3 wounds in when you go first. 1, it gives you hand trap protection, which should be obvious because Ripper can deny every hand trap in a game that isn't imperm. 2 is she allows us to get to the rest of the Canine engine, so we can access the rest of the Canine engine to set up as follow-up. And 3, another big one, it's a part of your combo, which showcased right here. So it is fulfilled. So in this case, us going first, it has fulfilled its main. The first copy has fulfilled its main purpose. It protected our combo from hand traps, and we now reached the point we no longer need anymore. So we can just link it off to get Clockwork Knight in rotation and just proceed from that position. And again, if they did end the bureau, they could have nibbed us any time earlier. But if they didn't, then we could use Ken to just steal it, and it would not really change anything. So in that regard, the first Ripper has served its purpose, so it's being used as Link Matar. Plus, we have the second one in the graveyard to summon off Azuna in case needed. Okay, let's look at this end board. This is from a single noir. You have full hand knowledge. You have 3 RBs in your graveyard, so Shepherd's Crook is now live. You have the Quick Whip spell, which is not live at the current moment, but it will become live later on. You have this guy. You have King Regulus as Omnigate. You have Lupus live, and you have Operation Test as follow-up, and you have Operation Test as follow-up. Now, let me tell you one thing about the sequence of how we do this. So I'll show you how the sequence will work. So we use Regulus to hit an important Omnigate here. This Vector sends up Rocket as follow-up. Now here's where the board gets interesting. Because now here's where it gets interesting here, people, and I want to showcase this option. In this context here, you would use Azuna. You use Azuna to dump Lupus. You wait until the opponent summons a monster. Doing this sequence will allow you to play around infinite permanence. Now, why is that important? Now, here's what ends up happening. If they imperm this card, that's actually fine if they do that, because if they do, say, Ash Blossom here to try to stop Azuna, you have the counter trap phase to pop Blade, negate it, and now Azuna can resolve successfully. And then, because you still have not triggered Funk Dart's float effect, you can then float into Cutter or Driller as your alternative interaction. Most specifically, Drill is your alternative because it's effectively Blade's effect, but it destroys instead of taking control. And here's the thing: if they get a couple more buys on the board, you still have Driller for the pop. You would just make Valor instead as a Book of Moon, and then you use Release Restraint to summon Jax, which will pop another card. So that's kind of the interaction that was from a single noir, right? That's Monster Negate, that's the Monster Pop, Brain Control, Spell Trap Negate, Counter Trap, that's 4, Valor's 5, Jax is 6, Gate from Regulus, that's 7. That 7 interaction, we have Operation Test follow-up. We still have 4 more cards in hand, by the way, which we were +6 on the opponent with us going first, and when they're on the draw, we're +5. We have so much follow-up now. We have a decent-sized hand, and we have really good follow-up. That's really, really good. People don't realize how strong that is. And on top of that, your rank 5 is untargetable because of Lupus, because Lupus gives any rank 5 target protection. That's crazy. That's such a good end board. And keep in mind, that's on a single noir, and you have hand trap protection, which is very good. Okay, let's go over the next 1.5 card combo in the deck. It is Joker plus City level 5. What does this provide to the table? Well, it provides a freaking lot, and we're gonna see. We're gonna take a look. Now, for Scrap Recycler, you're gonna dump cannon. This is very important. Now, we reach this point. Let's count how many summons this is. I would have mentioned, this is technically the Beer Buff combo, but not the way people think. Because let's count the summons. There's a summon 1 and 2. Even though she summoned both at the same time, each monster is summoned counts separately. So this is summon 2. And of course, we did Juggle to add Lantern so we can have us follow up or extension if necessary. We did River Stormer, which is summon 3, and we summoned Scrap Recycle, which is summon 4, which will dump this. But here's the thing, however. Vulcan Booster is summon number 5, and its effect to search triggers on Link Summon. You had Funk Dog, and you had Operation Test, and you have Vivac Cannon. Under this only points to. This is summon 6. Now, why is this technically Nibiru proof? Well, the reason for it is simple. This card threatens Nibiru. Your opponent has to Nibiru this card right as soon. Your opponent is either forced to give up Nibiru, or they need to use it right here. The only time they should keep it would be Pacific Watch if they combo with another hand trap. So, for example, Valor Imperm on Vulcan Booster would really cripple you, because then, unless you already open Funk Dog or Operation Test, you have no way to really contest it. And that's kind of sucks for the deck, because then, if you go Lantern and bring that back, they just nib you upon you summoning this before you can use the effect, and you lose your whole board. So they need a specific combination of cards in order to play through this line we're about to do. But, if they don't fucking nib you here, well, guess what? You do this effect, you look at their hand, and if they do have nib that they decide to save, you punish them for it by just stealing it. You punish them for it by stealing it. Now, if we did get rid of Nibiru and they have no other interaction to stop us, Lantern is now safe to do. This. Now here's where the other piece of interaction comes into play. By using this effect, we recycle Scrap Recycler. We dump Citadel to the graveyard. Yeah, and that's the reason we dump the trap, because we can use this discard for Clockwork Knight, which saves us 3 cards in our opening hand. Alright, here we go. We have 3 cards in hand, plus these 2. We have a Zuna for interaction. So how many interactions is this, people? Effective round, but now we have Citadel into rotation. So now we have Omnigate, we have Monster Pop, we have Bazuna to go into this for 3, into this for 4 with Release Restraint, and we have, this is number 5, of Funk Dog with a Trigger, which will summon a Driller, so that's 6, this is 7, and we have Citadel in rotation, which is interaction number 8. Off of Joko plus any level 5, this is 8 interaction. All hand trap knowledge. This is all hand trap knowledge in a hand rip. That is insane. From a single Joko plus any level 5. That's insane. I want y'all to think about it. The deck was not able to do this before. This build can actually now do this from a single Joko plus level 5, or even from a single Noir. Like, this is insane to think about. Like, that's insane, man. Okay, now let me go back to the thing I mentioned. Let's go back to the point where you do Vulcan Booster and you summon Lambda Cannon. If your opponent does Nibiru you at that point, Funk Dog will still trigger, and it will summon Blade, and it will dump an RB Cutter's Drillers on it, right? So let's say you have that. You now have Machina, you have that. However, keep in mind, you still have Lantern in the hand. If that were to happen, well, you could do Lantern summon itself, to bring back Noir. Noir specifically just Noir. And then you add Case, and then Case will then add Azuna, so you have that as fault. So you'd have that as an interaction piece. But where the deck would really change actually is that you can summon Booster Vulcan Booster again. Reason is Nora's typing. Noir is Earth attribute, but most importantly, she's an Earth machine monster. That's important, by the way, because then you just link off your Blade and your Noir, go back to the booster. Then you do booster, summon Cannon, and then Ken's effect will then add back G10 color. Then you link off the 2, 4 for Barricade Board Blocker. Then you add back. Then what you do, you can do either one. Does not matter which one you do, right? You do that. You link it to Clockwork Knight. You dump Operation Test to get Clockwork Knight rotation. Then you link up to 2, dump Clockwork Knight, dump, get Regulus. Now, you do miss out on a couple pieces of interaction admittedly. However, and this is the pretty big one. This is the one that's really worth knowing here, though. This is the big one. And though, here is the very, very big one that's worth knowing, though. You still get access to Affect the State. You still have access to a couple cards. You do lose out on around 2 pieces of interaction, which is important. However, there's one very, very important thing that's worth knowing, though. We still have Azuna. We still get Operation Test back as follow-up. The only interaction we miss out on, relatively speaking, is Liberation. We miss out a couple pieces of interaction with this one. And I believe we do miss out on this. I don't exactly 100% remember, but if we do miss out on this, then we just lose 50% interaction. But do keep in mind, you forced out the Bureau. You forced it out. Now, all you then have to do is literally just look at their hand rip one other card. So now they're down to 3 cards, and they have to deal with at least 5 pieces of interaction, which is not very easy, by the way, considering our interaction can be done at any point. It's not very easy. But yeah, this is a good end board. Like, this is probably the most amount of interactions this deck can pull off from a single card plus a spare card. It's insane, man. Like, this is crazy amount of interaction. Okay, so I'll showcase the same combo here, but I'm gonna give you I'll give you a scenario here. The scenario, it's still the same combo. It's Joker plus Saint level 5. However, there's one big main difference in this one is we have Scrap Cycle in our hand, because this is where we mainly search off for River Storm if we hadn't done our normal yet. So what happens if you open Scrap Cycle with this combo? Well, let's take a look. Now, this was summon number 4, by the way, and this is why you detach Noir every time, because she's Machine, so she can be father for King Regulus. Now the rest of her hand is Nibiru proof for real this time. Keep in mind, you still have 2 cards in your hand, by the way. This is 2 leftover cards in your hand. Actually, no, 1 leftover card. Same points of interaction, and this is your alternate route, slight alternative route if you open Scrap Cycle with the combo. Yep, you still get around 8 pieces of interaction, people, and it's hand knowledge, and your hand rip. Holy moly, that is so freaking strong. Alright. Okay, for the final combo, I'm going to showcase probably I'm gonna showcase a combo where I play through a couple hand traps. Now, if you all would like me to showcase combos of this build in particular that can play through certain types of hand traps, go ahead and let me know. Let me know in the comment section below. So here's what happens if you have this, and let's say your opponent throws out your first couple hand traps. Now, say the opponent, like, let's say you do this, and the opponent has no idea which build you're running. They might ash this effect first. Normally, that would not be a good idea, but in the context that we had in Sudden Ripper, that would not be a bad idea to do. So now you go into River Stormer. Now your opponent will think, okay, they're playing Kirstone, so they impermanent to deny access to it. That makes sense, though. But unfortunately for them, they get hard punished for this because and again, that's just an example, because you have Scrapper Cycler and they impermanent, they might think you're going to add Cycler, but then you just normal it anyway. And because they went the 2 fucking cards from the hand, guess what? Lanikin is going to be so powerful here, because now we could just take their best monster, some of the best monsters in their hand, and force them to summon it. So now they just have Alright, sorry about that. Now we do the same thing, Scrap Recycler. Now, so, couple of things about that combo here. Because we got hit by a couple hand traps, we don't have access to the K9 engine anymore, so we have to rely on the RB part. But luckily, it's still good. We still have regular setup. We still have this to get out 1 interaction, 2 more from Pops, which is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 from this, and then 5 from Citadel. We still have that. We still have opportunities to follow up, and we still have these 2 cards in hand that could be anything. We still have decent follow up. The only thing we're missing out on is literally the K9 cards. Is the only thing we're missing out on. But that's like fine, because if we drew Kana cards later in the game, we can use them to come back. Overall, not a bad board, considering we play through 2 hand traps or baited them out. Okay, people, so let's go over both the Machina RB version and the K9 version. Now, I will clarify that there is a couple other really good versions that I definitely do think are very powerful now post the second wave of support. There's the Cyber Dragon version, and there is the Kriston version. But unfortunately, I personally think for those builds in particular, I think you're better off just playing the K9 version anyway, because one, even though the RB's got really good second wave support that massively improved their endboard, the restrictions of RB do prevent it from being as versatile as, say, the K9 version, whereas the K9 engine has practically no downside to them, which is why they're a really powerful engine. But I do think this deck, I do think the RB builds have slight decent enough differences that might make them stand out from them. But the K9 versions of this deck are going to be the deck's biggest competitor, in my opinion. So with that, let's go over the more casual, but I think actually a viable version of the deck now, which is the Machina build, which is the closest we're going to get to a pure RB deck. So first of all, let's go over the cards. 1 Citadel, you need it as a part of your combo. Regulus, same thing. Regulus, it works as extender. We don't usually do it a lot, but if we have to, it is what it is. Citadel's a pretty bad pick. If you don't get it out of your hand consistently, it's a very bad card to draw, which is why we would have to dump it to the grave. Citadel Fortress, although at least Fortress can summon itself if necessary. 1 Power Bunker, 1 Blade, and 1 Cannon. Just one of each. Power Bunker, it's literally just a follow-up card slash crackback type of card. You don't use it going fertilize your endboard since it doesn't do anything. So like Vulcan Rocket, you're just using it you're using it on the crackback or going second to outboards. Blade and Cannon, even though they are bad bricks if you have no way to summon them from the hand or ditch them, these are mandatory one-ups. You need Blade for combos, you need it as an interaction piece, and you 100% need Cannon for recursion, follow-up, and getting hand knowledge. If you're not running these cards, then you're not really playing RB correctly. To Vulcan Rocket, again, in the Machina version, it's mandatory for 2 if you want to use River Stormer, because it'll give you an alternate route you can take. 2 Onclops, and 2 Gear Frame. I know people may ask is, why not 3 Gear Frame and 1 Onclops? I did try that originally, but I had many test ends and games where I would open the 1 Onclops and my Machina Gear Frame would not do anything. Now, you could say, but hold on, what are you talking about? You could just add freaking Fortress, pitch yourself in this, and it's the same result. Well, yeah, you're correct, but there's an unfortunate problem. You're ditching a card from your head, and as part of it, on a body that could have easily have been maybe an extender. And that's bad because in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, if you're low on resources and your opponent breaks your board, you have literally no way to come back. And my goal here was to try to minimize the number of bricks as possible, but also still maintain high consistency, which I know this sounds crazy, but 2 Unclops seems to have been the perfect case here. Because if you open Gear Frame plus Unclops, you could still do normal Gear Frame and just search the second copy of Unclops. And then you just do main combo. That way, the other Unclops in your head, you could keep it as a follow-up if you want, or if you want to, you could actually use it as discard fodder for Clockwork Knight. So it actually has decent versatility in this regard. That's why I personally would recommend to people is try out the 2-2 ratio and adjust it to how you like it. 2 cutter, self-explanatory, and 2 driller, also self-explanatory. I think 2 of these are mandatory. These are like the main interactions of the deck anyway, besides Blade. 3 Fua, 3 Ash, 3 Ogre, 1 Call by 3 that. This is like 13 non-engine, which is not too bad. That's pretty decent in the context of the deck. 3 Stage Lighting. In my opinion, this is the RB build that takes the most advantage of Stage Lighting. This is the one build that does not care about its downside. You always consistently make 5 pieces of interaction, maybe up to 5 to 6 pieces of interaction, consistently from a single card, even under its drawback. And personally, I think that's a very good thing, because that means you have more room to fit in more non-engine if necessary by adjusting the ratios. 3 Machina redeployment. Easily a great starter. I used to run Machina Defense Perimeter, because this deck lacked recursion and that card was good for that. But now that we have actual good repeatable recursion now, that card is no longer needed in the deck, so we took it out. But redeployment still stays in the deck because it's a fucking amazing starter, and that's why it's really good. 2 Clockwork Knight. Used to play 3 and 2 Flourish Rare Goods, took them out for the new cards, and they ended up being great. However, I could definitely see myself maybe taking out RB Flash Stand in my deck and replace it with a 3rd Clockwork Knight just because of how strong it is as a card. Because keep in mind, you could turn every single monster on the field to machine. You could fuck over archetypes that need a specific type of monster on the field. Now, obviously, of course, the one exception to the rule is Crystron K9, because you just give them easy access to freaking Charging Infinity, which also, unironically, in the K9 version, you can actually use Clockwork Knight to get access to Charging Infinity if you want. We'll get to that later. Now, we have 2 operation tests. I do not think 3 is mandatory. I think you only need just 1 or 2 of them, 1 for follow-up, or 2 of them. But I have been having pretty good success with 2 operation tests. In my personal opinion, you use the first one for combo, you add it back as follow-up, and if you do go into a long grind game, the second one will come up. I think the second one comes up a lot if you go into the grind game, and that really matters in this regard. 3 Funk Dog. I do not understand why people only play 201. This card is insane now with the new support. You now have more combos. You have better one-card combos now. So, in my personal opinion, you should realistically bump this up at 3. Like, it's so important to keep on your board, and if your first one gets outed, you need another one in rotation. And of course, we got 1 stage on 1 next phase. Next phase, I think will 100% stay in the deck, no matter the build. But last stand, I will admit, I could see myself taking this card out of the deck. And it's mainly because, even though the effect is good, This trap, as I stated, has the weakness of losing to both Ash and Bell, and even DD Crow. Well, not DD Crow specifically, but Ghost Bell and Ash are big problems with this card. You can do this, and if it goes to the graveyard when you activate it, you can't even use its target protection effect, so target removal can easily out your board. So yeah, it is good. It is good if you really need to get an extra buy to play around board breakers. But besides that, it's not always a good card. It's kind of sometimes mid. So I could definitely see myself just take this out and put in like a different non-engine card. Like for example, I could 100% see myself take this out in favor of maybe another Clockwork Knight or just add in like triple Tactics Talent. So I should add Clockwork Knight 2. I think every RB deck should be playing 2 anyway. Now that we have easy access to the Clockwork Knight spell card now, 2 is 100% mandatory. You could even go up to 3 if you want, but I think 2 is perfectly fine. I think that's staple. Or more so, 2 of them feels more correct. 3 Vulcan Booster. I think in this version you need 3 for follow up. 1 Barricade. I think this is now like Clockwork Knight. I think this is a staple card in RB now because it gives you a way to now add back Operation Test. It gives you a consistent way to dump Clockwork Knight and always easy access to Regulus. SP Little Knight. 2 Shepherd's Crook. 3 Brute Blues. And 1 Restore. And the 2 extra deck filler slots, I gave them to Unicorn and Access Code. This is just to have an alternate way to clear boards in case we can't get the Brute Boost set up with either Pound Dunk or Vulcan Boost or Vulcan Rocket. This gives an alternate way. And we do have Dark, Wind, Fire, and Earth. So we do have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have like 4 attributes that make the conditions, so we can pop up to 4 cards now. Which, also fun fact, if you have Brute Boost and you set up Tark on the field and one of the monsters that Brute Boost points to is Cutter, you can protect Talker from legitimately, you can actually protect him from freaking Imperm, which is actually crazy. Or if you want to make it even more crazy, you could do Cannon before you commit to him, take a Veiler, and then summon this from deck with Funk Dog, then make this, and then if the Imperm, well guess what? You just protect it with G Cutter. So in a way, you protected this card while also setting up the graveyard, which is crazy to think about. So yeah, that's effectively the Maka version of the deck. I think this build is way better now. It's a lot more consistent. It's better resiliency, but most importantly, the end board and ceiling and follow-up is a lot better now. But this is nothing compared to the one that I really think is the best version of RB, the K9 build. In my opinion, this is the best version of RB, post Doom of Dimensions. I think this is easily the best version. It's insanely powerful. You have tons of combos. Every combo leads into hand-trap knowledge in a certain number of summons. It's very consistent. Yes, it runs bricks, but thanks to the deck being at 50, we now have a lower chance to see those bricks, which is really, really strong. So let's go over the deck here. These ones self-explanatory. 1 Lupus and 3 Noir. Now, as we know, Noir, I personally think Noir, post Doom Dimensions, is going to become the best normal summon in the game. Okay. This card does so much just by itself. You summon a level 5 from deck, and you search the entire engine. This gives access to the entire K9 engine literally by itself. On top of that, it's hand knowledge, which is very good in RB because that means you get another way to look at the opponent's hand and see if they have a threat. If they do have a threat, you play around it first until you get the cannon, then cannon will just answer the threat right at gate, then you can just go off and just play the game for free. And on top of that, Noor is a machine type monster, and she's Earth attribute, so meaning she can be searched off Clockwork Knight, and she is a machine target for Link Light. She helps you Link Light the Vulcan booster if you revive with Lantern, and if worst case scenario, so you need an Omnigate for sure, you just summon Regulus by targeting it. That is really, really freaking strong, people. Like, I don't think people realize how powerful that is. That's like so strong. Like this card, in my opinion, Noir is the best normal summon in the entire game. I think it's going to be the best normal summon. It's such a powerful card. 3 Azuna, 3 Jolico, 1 Lantern. Besides Noir, the rest of the engine is pretty much standard. With the exception being Release Restraint, but we'll get... So, Release Restraint. People may wonder why we're not playing the world for an extreme. I'll be honest with you, it's mainly the lack of room is the main big one. Now, that's not maybe not be too hard. We could just take out a copy of Brew Blues House and just because realistically we never make the third one. I only ever keep three because there is a chance that if you go to a long grind game, the third one might come up. But since Cannon recurs resources, I could see myself taking out Brew Blues in favor of the Werewolf. Now, the reason why I wanted to mention this is because while Extreme is a lot better card, Extreme has some pretty big weaknesses though. Firstly, Extreme can only be done in the main phase. And two, yes, it gives you a way to go with the Wolf, but you have, but the only card that this can be done over is a Canine rank 5. If you do any other generic rank 5 and they get outed, then they don't do anything. But what Release Restraint allows you to do is not only can this be done at any time in your combo or any time during the turn, so not only does this help you dodge target no matter which phase is in, this also protects your rank 5s if they're about to get negated. So, for instance, say you do River Stormer, like say you have a Spare Machine on your field and you make River Stormer with a Spare Machine on the field. If they, for example, decide for some reason to imperm this, you chain Release Restraint to target this, you make Ripper. That way, you don't have to commit any level 5 buys to Ripper, and you can just make it. Now you have now you can protect your board from another hand trap. Not only did you play around target protection, you now beat hand traps. And to me, that is very strong in this build. That is really, really strong in this version. Since it does mean we could play around hand traps better. And I don't even realize how powerful that realistically is, all things considered. Really good card. Honestly, in my opinion, very underrated card. However, if I did edit Extreme Force, I very likely would take out Last Stand for this, because Last Stand is like the least impactful card, or at least the worst RP card in this deck. So I could see that, and I could definitely see myself take out a copy of Brubus in favor of Werewolf, so at least I have another option off of any of the two cards if needed. Which, I'm pretty sure after this deck list, I show off the deck list, I'll likely make that change. So anyway, let's get back to it. Vulcan Boost, Vulcan Rocket, as stated. In the Machina version, you have to play 2 if you play Riverstorm, but in the Canine version, you only need the 1 because we can easily access it from the Canine engine. 2 Driller and 2 Card, self-explanatory. Scrap Recycler, you need it in this version of the deck. It's your main normal zone you search off of Riverstorm if you open Chocobos level 5 as shown earlier. Or if you open any RB monster plus Scrap Recycler, you get full combo, which is also good. 3 Ash, 3 Ogre, self-explanatory. 3 Imperm. This is around 12 dungeon lack callback, but again, this can be adjusted. We can adjust the ratios later on if needed. 1 Turbo Booster. Again, as stated, there probably is another machine extender that's generic I'm probably missing out on. But in this one, Turbo Booster is not a bad extender. I think it's actually pretty decent in this version. And I think for the time being, until we find a better one or Konami makes a better one, this might be needed in the K9 version of the deck. 2-stage running. We may not be able to use this card as easily as the Maka version, but it still is one of your best 1-card starters in case this is your only starter in this deck. Because in this regard, what you could do instead is you could just do this and get a nib-proof line, and then what you can do instead is you could just normal summon Joko for free, and you could just add Azuna, and then Azuna's interaction. So that's like at least one positive thing is that if you get the main setup, hit Nibiru or something, you could just normal Joko afterwards, and then just get Azuna as a part of your endboard piece. So it's not always the worst thing in the world. Yeah, pretty much that. 2 Kalago Knight, 2 Operation, 3 Dong, self-explanatory. Extra deck, 2 Kalago Barricade, self-explanatory. Shepherd's Crook, 3 Burbu, self-explanatory. Vulcan Booster, we actually only play 2 of it in this version because we just use 1 for combo. We use the other one later in the game if needed. River Store, self-explanatory. Rank 5's 2 Ripper. One for the first one for when you're going first to protect your combo from hand traps, give you get access to the whole Canine engine in rotation, and also being a combo extender by becoming material for blocker once its purpose has been fulfilled. And then your second Ripper is mainly for follow up, and also Graveyard Hand Negate in the mid to late game. Which again, in simplified game states, I think RB shines in the mid simplified game state where you just constantly keep adding back your resources and just getting things back into rotation. 1 Valon, self-explanatory, and Jax. Jax is if you exceed summoned card, or if your opponent puts a monster in the hand or grave, you detach one material to target monster on the field and destroy it. Disregards any level 5s. Good effect, and if an Kinex Receiver monster has disguised material, it gains the following effect that during any turn in which your opponent is active monster effect in the hand or graveyard, any battle damage this card inflicts to your opponent is doubled. So if you play the Wolf, if you have Cannon Case, it counts 400, can attack multiple times, and just does insane damage. Like, you just out almost anything in the game. And that's effectively it, pretty much. Now, there is one other cool thing I want to mention as a tag choice you can run in the Canine version, and while the Cyber Dragon version can easily do this, I want to showcase that the Canine version can actually run this package. So, let me talk about this engine in particular. So, in this one in particular with the Cyber Dragon, obviously we know Cyber Dragon's very good. He's level 5 machine, so he can be used for rank 5 plus with Canine cards. But the one thing about this card worth mentioning, though, is access to the monsters he gives you. Let me talk about more specifically about these two in particular. So, both these two monsters, both require Cyber Dragon. One requires Fortress requires Cyber Dragon plus 1 plus machines, and one Cyber Dragon monster plus 1 plus monsters in the extra monster zone. Now, let me explain the detail effectively of why these are good. Number one, if you force yourself to go into the lock of Stage Lane or Vulcan Booster early, these cards actually don't get affected by this because their original attack is 0. And as a result of it, if you open Cyber Dragon plus Clockwork Knight, you literally out every single card. You literally will just out nearly any board in the game. That's the reason why Dragotail has been playing Mega Fleet, because against the Canine Crystron deck, which is, from what I understand, is sometimes a hard matchup for the deck, this gives them a fighting chance by just on their entire board, because their board always ends on Cyber Dragon Infinity, and Mega Fleet just needs any Cyber Dragon monster. That's very strong, and of course, Fortress, very strong with the Canine Crystron, because half their board they do have machines, so this is a great freaking card for this. Now, let's talk about this one, the Cyber Dragon Infinity core. So, as many of you probably know, now that we have easy access to Clockwork Knight, and you play the Cannon engine, instead of actually making maybe Ripper if you want to, what you can instead do is take out a couple cards in your extra deck, fit in over Infinity, then with Clockwork Knight, and you sacrifice the fall of Clockwork Knight can give you by that. So instead, what you can actually do that's a cool idea is you can make Cyber Dragon Infinity by turning any Spirit 2 K9s into it. Then you make Cyber Dragon Infinity. Now you have your Omnigate instead of Regulus. And why that's cool is that you'll have Clockwork Knight in rotation on part of your end board. So you not only floodgate your opponent's entire board, all your monsters are huge. This will go to your little guys because now they actually have decent attack stat. And on top of that, Infinity gets really freaking huge by being a 3k beater, Omnigate beater. And on top of all that, because you still have this one spare Clockwork Knight, if you make the second one, you can pitch one Clockwork Knight, you can pitch the one in the field, bash the one, and just add Regulus as your follow-up. If that's not crazy, I don't know what else is, man. Well, that's pretty much it. So, what are my conclusions about the second wave of RB support? Well, I still stand by personally that I don't think it's not as good as Mimighoul's second wave. But it is way better than people think it realistically is, because I think most people just don't know how the deck plays or even knows how to play it anyway. But the second wave, it really did improve a lot. The only big problem it did not fix was the lack of a Link 1. But again, I'm pretty sure the OCG will probably give them a Link 1 in the future, but for now they're probably not going to. Unless Konami just gives us a random as fuck TG exclusive Link 1 machine monster in like Doom of Dimensions as something. I don't know. Now, so what weaknesses did the second wave improve? Well, the recursion's a lot better, the ceiling is way higher, and most importantly, the follow-up is much better now. You get follow-up from the K9 engine, and you have follow-up from the RB side of the deck. So in a sense, you always have, at least most cases, at least 2 forms of follow-up. And on top of all that, if your opponent does not out your whole board, your monster also has recursion. So, example, Shepherd's Crook will keep a cycle back next phase. If you can get cannon rotation, he always adds back monsters. So you always add back monsters you can summon. And Clockwork Knight, if you get a second one in the grave, that's also follow-up. So in a sense, you have so much more of a follow-up now that the deck actually, I think, is able to compete. In my personal opinion, people, I think this is the best variation of K9. Well, not best variation of K9, but in my opinion, this is the best version. This is the best build of RB that I think is the most competitive. It has now it does have run some bricks, but you are at 50 cards to decrease the chance of seeing the bricks. You have high consistency. Your board is really. You have a very layered interactive board. Some of it's hard to contest with because half of the effects trigger in the graveyard or even in the hand. You always get at least two forms of follow up, but the main big one that will probably set this build apart from all the other builds of K9, every combo that the deck does that's optimal, all of it leads to hand knowledge. You will instantly see what's in their hand, find out what they have, and then you just adjust your end board to play around what's in their hand. So in some cases, if your opponent has a hand trap, well, guess what? Can instantly outset by summoning to their field. Then, if the rest of the hand has a very important monster effect that needs to resolve, you get next phase. If they have a spell card that's very important, maybe board break, or maybe get access to a combo piece, you just make Cutter as a part of your end board. So yes, the hand knowledge in this deck does is insane. Every single hand combo leads into hand knowledge. And if you do play Extreme, you get an extra pop with the werewolf, you get an extra pop from it. And on top of that, the wolf will actually hand rip another card from their hand, so you get rid of another important piece in their hand. You see what I mean? Why this is so freaking powerful. So yes, the second wave, it's way better than people think it is. The deck's actually competent now. Now, I still think the ceiling of this deck is low compared to every other Realm deck. But compared to before, this deck ceiling is actually good enough that it might be able to see competitive success as a rogue deck. But do not say this is me hyping up the archetype. I still think this archetype has some pretty big weaknesses. For example, I still think the RB main deck monsters are too easy to play around. I still think they're very easy to get over because they're so weak and they lack a lot of protection. You know. And if your opponent summons multiple monsters that don't trigger, they can just swing over these and you don't get much follow-up. Now, that being said, however, there are some end boards you can make where that weakness is not apparent. So, for example, in the boards where you have Shepherd's Crook, you could your Shepherd's Crook will likely be a 2k beater, or maybe 2500 attack if you have a suit on rotation. So they will not be able to swing over this guy very easily, so they would have to imperm this. So as a result of it, this is where I think the deck really. So as a result of it, the deck's pretty good. I think this is a very good build. So anyway, thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys next time.